Welcome back to the Rock Room and another episode of the Rock Your Divorce podcast, where we help men navigate the divorce process in a healthy way. I'm your host, Stephen Valente. If you're like me, you may be struggling with your faith. You may be feeling that you don't have the knowledge or the experience of your faith. You may feel like you're falling victim to distractions of that faith. You may also feel like it's best to go it alone or do it alone, like a lone wolf mentality. Or lastly, you may have no accountability in keeping faith number one in your life. If that sounds like you and you're having those feelings or thoughts, then you are absolutely in the right place. Because in today's episode, we're going to talk about recruiting a faith mentor and the benefits of doing so. So if that's something that you're interested in, then plug in, turn it up, and let's hit the stage. Okay, as I've said, there are 7 key areas that if you focus on them very deliberately and intentionally each and every day, you will not only navigate this divorce process in a healthy way, but you will set yourself up to thrive after the process is finished. We've already talked about the first one, which is spiritual, and underneath spiritual, we had a previous episode related to daily prayer. Today's episode focuses on the second key area of the spiritual, and that is finding and recruiting a faith mentor. So when I think of a mentor, especially when comparing it to the music industry, there is an individual that bands utilize each and every day, especially when they're in the studio, called a music or a record producer. And we know some of the more popular producers like George Martin, who worked with the Beatles. You had Berry Gordy, who was the father of Motown music. And of course, coming out of Motown was Quincy Jones, who worked most notably with Michael Jackson, right? So there was those names. But as you move into rock and roll, names like Rick Rubin or Bob Rock, or even, Dr. Dre when it comes to rap. All of those are kind of the most popular music and record producers of the last several decades. And that position as a music producer or a band producer basically is like that creative leader, that project manager. They're the individual that takes these albums and everything from start to finish, right? But they're more than just a technical aspect to these musicians and bands. In fact, if you think about the producers that I named and the artists that those producers worked with, you would kind of think like, well, why did these artists even need a record producer or music producer? They were amazing talents. They were amazing artists. They had a tremendous amount of creativity within them. But in order to harness that creativity and in order to take it from that kind of artistic vision to actually commercial success, they needed experience. They needed someone who could take a step back, bring that knowledge, have that creative guide, and really focus that artistic ability that the musician or the band has, and really fine tune it and hone it into something that is that commercial success. So I kind of liken a music producer or a record producer in the music industry to a mentor, a faith mentor in your life and in my life. These mentors really kind of serve as that guide. They bring support, they bring knowledge, they bring an understanding because they have that experience, right? They may be older than you, or they may be maybe not so much older than you, but they have a wealth of experience or knowledge in faith that you can look to. It's kind of like that mentorship or that big brother that you may or may not have had, but this is your big brother or mentor in your faith. And along with that comes wisdom, it comes guidance, it comes direction. We talked a little bit earlier about accountability, right? So as you walk through this divorce process, there are many, many things that are thrown at you that will challenge your faith. It will challenge you day in and day out to stay that man that God has intended you to be. And if you don't, it's going to prevent you from becoming the man that ultimately you need for yourself and that your children need from you, and that God has intended you to be. So having that accountability partner that can keep you on the straight and narrow, that does those check-ins with you, that is key to your success in not only building your faith, but staying on that faith path each and every day. One of the things that I also liken it to, for those of you that have taken music lessons, whether you played an instrument or you're a vocalist, or in any kind of even in sports, if you take a look at coaches or individuals that help you develop your skill and hone your skill, it reminded me a lot of learning the drums and going to drum lessons, or having individuals that I knew that played drums teach me. And it's taking from that experience, it's learning. It's not unlike this, where someone made mistakes or went through an experience or has some really good advice and tips and tricks to help you do better. It's that sharing and relationship that you're looking for and that I was looking for in my faith. So as I look to my own personal story, I had to go out and I had to find and recruit the best faith mentor that fit me and who I was trying to become, by looking at the way that men lived their lives, men that had shared similar experiences to me. And I was very blessed to have and still have a tremendous faith mentor in my life. I've known this gentleman for 30 years or more. And along with life and conversations that we had about parenting and divorce and just some other life topics, the idea of having that big brother, that mentor, that guide, that instructor in my faith really helped me through, because his perspective of things, he was very, very strong in his faith. So that helped me. I had someone to look up to. I had someone that had the experience and the knowledge that could guide me through this season of my life from that faith journey perspective. And we had an opportunity to share in honest and transparent communication. And that's really, really important when it comes to having that type of mentor or having any type of relationship where you can be yourself, you can be your authentic self, you can, share your experiences or your fears or your doubts or what you're going through. And by not withholding, you can really utilize what they know and their experience, especially when it comes to faith, and you can have it apply to the situation that you're in, right? If you're holding back, or if you're not sharing the full story, or you're not truly opening up to what's going on in your life, the help that you may need, or the situations that are causing you the most pain or anxiety or depression or whatever it is, it's not going to be helpful to you. So, so find someone who's very strong in their faith that you look up to, and who you can have that open, honest, and transparent communication with. The other thing that we did that really helped me out, and I encourage you to do it, is to have those kind of regular check-ins, whether it's text messages, whether it's phone calls. Um, my faith mentor and I like to meet for lunch a lot. We met on a consistent basis. He knew, of course, everything that I was going through, and he was very consistent in his communication with me, checking in with me, making sure I was all right. He provided a lot of scripture. He provided a lot of, very supportive words along the way. And it made all the difference in the world, knowing that I had somebody there. Of course, you have your family or you have your friends, but you may not necessarily want to share everything that's going on or share from a faith perspective. But having him there really meant the world to me, and it really was a life changer for me, because not only was he strong in his faith, and not only did we have that open and honest communication, we were consistent about how often we communicated and the time that we took that we needed. He gave me that time. He was very accessible, and still is for that matter. Um, and then lastly, he really held me accountable. I mean, that was one of the big things that we talk about is accountability. And you can have all the great information that you want, and you can try to make changes in your life, and you can say that you're going to do and accomplish a lot of things. But if you don't have that accountability to it, especially in your faith, divorce will pull you away from a lot of things. It can really offset you. It can really throw you off track. And by having someone who has your best interests in mind, who knows who you're trying to be, and who is that solid faith foundation for you when it comes to a mentor or a coach or a guide or whatever, however you want to describe it, having that accountability to kind of keep you back on those rails is really a game changer. And I encourage you all, when you sit down and you talk to your potential faith mentor and you ask them to become this in your life, that you do those things. Because ultimately, over time, whether you're looking at it as a faith mentor, or if you take the analogy that I shared earlier about learning an instrument, you want to move from them being an instructor to you to being a collaborator with you, right? So as you grow in your faith, as you get through the divorce, as you move on and you thrive afterward, you have this individual who you really relied on to guide you through this process spiritually and in your faith. But after you've developed all of those muscles and you're solid in your faith and you're doing this, then it's more of an accountability of being a collaborator versus making sure that you're on the rails. So those are the key components, at least that happened for me. I encourage you to do the same thing, because the idea of recruiting this faith mentor is really a key point in making sure that you not only navigate this process in a healthy way, but after everything is done, you will come out and you will absolutely thrive, and you will have the opportunity to really be that man that you owe to yourself, to your kids, and to your friends and family and employers and everyone else. And potentially, like I said before, if you want to get into another long-term relationship or marriage, you can be that man for that person. So that's my personal story. So to recap on recruiting a faith mentor, again, the things that you need to think about when you're doing this is find someone who's very strong in their faith and that you would like to model your faith and the strength and the knowledge and the wisdom in that faith against, right? Number two, you must commit to open and honest communication and transparency with this individual, and they're going to do the same to you, so that you can really have those authentic conversations that benefits you, but ultimately both of you at the same time. The third thing is you have to do it on a consistent basis, right? So text messages, phone calls, lunches, pay for their lunch, and doing it more on a consistent basis fills you and continues to keep you in that mode, in that spirit of faith. And ultimately they will hold you, number 4, accountable to do what you say you're going to do, make the right decisions, do the right thing, strengthen your faith, so that ultimately you can become the man that God has intended you to be, the man that you deserve to be for yourself and for all those that love you, and for the life that you're going to live afterwards. So, if anything that I said, of course, resonated with you and you'd like to learn more about this, I absolutely suggest that you go to www.rockyourdivorce.com, sign up for a free 30-minute phone call with me. I'm also asking for you to like and share and subscribe to this podcast. But also, if you know men that are going through this process or they're struggling after their divorce process is done, I encourage you to let them know about the Rock Room, let them know about the Rock Your Divorce podcast, so that we can get the word out to help other men navigate the divorce process in a healthy way and ultimately thrive when it's done. So that ends another episode of the Rock Your Divorce podcast. I thank all of you for watching, and I'll see you again in the Rock Room.